A special thanks to Dark Wizard Games for sponsoring this video. New from the twisted mind of Mark Tormino, Dark Wizard Games has a new Kickstarter featuring 4 brand new modules for your 1st and 5th edition of the world's greatest role-playing game. Hunt for a lost civilization in the Pirates of the Serpent Den. Join the legendary tournament and fight to become the supreme warrior in Temple of the Black Lotus. Search for loot, fame, and glory in the forgotten city of the Spider Goddess. And finally, face off against a tribe of orcs bent on summoning ancient ancestral spirits and search for a powerful ancient weapon in the hidden shrine of the Warlord Chief. Sure to bring fun and zany adventure to your table, and most importantly,
maximum mayhem.
Back this Kickstarter today. A link is in the description. Lost Worlds from Nova Games Designs is a person-to-person fantasy combat game by game designer Alfred Leonardi. Certainly inspired by fantasy role-playing games like Dungeons & Dragons, it was released originally in 1983. Based on the World War I biplane combat game Ace of Aces, Lost Worlds uses an innovative flip book and character card to handle complex maneuvers and character abilities. If you've never seen this game before, you're in for a real treat, and if you've played it, come with me as I take a nostalgic look at this classic game. Coming right up on RPG Retro Reviews. Hello everyone, I'm Captain Courageous, and I review old school role-playing modules and games and try to give them a fun and informative analysis. This week I'm going back to 1983 to look at a somewhat obscure game that was quite amazing in its time and very innovative, but for a variety of reasons, which I'll list a little bit later, probably never received the accolades it deserved. But before I start talking about the game, let me briefly talk about the future of this channel. It's no secret that my video output has been spotty at best, and I've been running this channel for 10 years now, and certainly I have no plans to stop it, but to be honest, the grind of putting out videos has got me a little burned out. With my DJ schedule being what it is, my family life, and my own weekly game, my time is very thin, and a lot of times I just like to relax and pour through some old game manuals, play an old war game with some friends, or just spend time working on my campaign without the stress of worrying about my next video. Which is why I kind of took a month off and did what I wanted, which was actually a good thing. I got to dive into a few things that have been percolating in my head for a while, building a massive Dwarven Forge dungeon at my game table for my players and for you, which I'm going to share with you on my next video. And here's a little sneak peek of what's to come and what I've been working on. Alright, so let's go ahead and get on with my overview of the Lost Worlds game. Let me clarify, there have been several iterations and releases for this game over the years from a variety of different game manufacturers. For this review, I'm not going over anything from Flying Buffalo, Rune Sword, or Chessex. The quality of these varied greatly, and they didn't handle the license very well, in my opinion, frequently adding needless complexity or poorly explained rules. So for this review, I'm going to stick to and discuss only the original releases from Nova Games Designs. So with that said, what is this game exactly? It is a fun way to have generally one-on-one combat between typically fantasy characters such as a man with a sword and a shield and a skeleton with a scimitar and shield, a manticore, a troll, and more. To play this game, each player needs a booklet, and each booklet also comes with a character card that shows what special abilities the character has, if any, and what the rules for those are and what combat maneuvers the character can perform. As you can see by this example, the number of options on the character card is quite impressive. During play, one player gives their booklet to the other player while keeping their character card. Thus, if I'm playing the man with the sword and shield versus the skeleton, I keep my character card and give the other player my book. The skeleton player keeps their skeleton card and gives me the skeleton book. And when I open it, what I see is the skeleton, and they see the man with the sword and shield. Got it? All right. When you look at the page of a booklet, it's divided into two parts or parchments. The large parchment displays your opponent as you see them, and the smaller parchment is called the movement parchment, and it determines the results of the maneuvers that each player chooses. Each one has a number. The display parchment has the odd numbers, and the movement parchment has the even numbers. Play starts with each player at extended range on page 57. This is consistent with all the books in the series. You always start on page 57 looking at your opponent at extended range. There is a third component to each page as well. At the bottom of the display parchment are instructions. These you read to your opponent and usually restrict your opponent in some way in regards to what maneuvers they can choose next. For example, the starting parchment says, do only extended range next turn. So, when looking at the character card, you can only choose maneuvers from the extended range chart at the bottom. In addition to what maneuvers you can do with your character, the top of the character card has additional statistics. The character's height value. Taller characters can gain advantage with some maneuvers. Your starting body points, essentially hit points. When you reach 0 to -5 hit points, you're unconscious and you've lost the game. More than -5 and you're dead, which can be bad if you're keeping track of experience. Also, there's attacks, usually a 1, but some characters have more. The number represents the number of opponents your attacks can score against in a single turn. I'll talk more about 2 characters versus 1 combat in just a moment. With that bit of explanation, let me demonstrate a turn of combat for you. As I said, you keep your character card and give the book to your opponent and then turn to parchment 57, so you see your opponent facing you at extended range. In a battle between the man in chainmail with sword and shield versus the skeleton with a scimitar and shield, it would look like this. Note the instructions say do only extended range, so you consult the extended range chart only for your maneuver. As the man, I'm going to choose to block and close. So on the character card under extended range, it says I turn to parchment 56. Ignore the picture as it's not relevant yet. The skeleton player wants to swing high and turns to parchment 64. So once both players are on the appropriate movement parchment, they tell each other what number they are on. In the case of the man in chainmail, the skeleton player says 64. So looking at the movement parchment, maneuver 64 directs me to page 3, and then I turn to that and I can see that the skeleton is swinging high. And I tell them that they can do no red maneuvers on next turn. The man in chainmail player tells the skeleton player they are doing 56, which directs them to parchment 17. And when you turn to that page, you can see the man blocked high. It says score -6, which means no damage. Also note that the swing high maneuver has a -6 modifier itself, so a total of -12. Only score results that are positive score damage. Theoretically, an experienced character might be able to overcome all that, but that would require a very powerful and experienced character. Play proceeds from here with each player picking their maneuvers within the restrictions set down by further parchments until one character is knocked unconscious by being reduced to 0 body points or killed by being reduced to greater than -5. As far as I can tell, the original Nova print run consisted of some 18 different characters, of which I have 9, 2 adventure sets, and the Tome of Red Magic. Furthermore, each of the characters was based on a Raupartha miniature, which theoretically could add an additional dimension to your combats. The Ruins of the Ancients box set included the man with sword and shield and the skeleton with a scimitar and shield, as well as a plastic dungeon setting and corresponding dungeon dressing pieces. According to the description I read on this, it's a board game adaptation. Players take miniatures into a dungeon room and maneuver on the board until they come within melee range, at which point they would switch to the Lost World books to resolve combat. Each of the various characters also had interesting quirks and special rules. For example, the skeleton could take a duck maneuver and possibly pick up a fallen bone and restore lost hit points. The lizard man has the adrenaline rush ability, in which their hits do more damage once the lizard man has been hit in combat. The wraith can drain opponents' body points and dematerialize. The troll can rage, and that's built into his character card, and if you study his matrix, you can really get some interesting results. In addition, he has 35 body points. The Manticore is a very tough opponent with 20 body points, the ability to fly, and a venomous sting. The toughest opponent from the Nova line is the Coldrake. I don't have this book yet, but its abilities include the ability to fly, frost breath, and it has 60 body points. Of course, it's entirely possible to play with more than just 2 players for massive melee for all, and for some of the tougher opponents, that's certainly highly recommended. It's unlikely the man with sword and shield can defeat the Coldrake all by himself. In general, players line up against opponents evenly and then move on to other targets once they've eliminated their opponent. When fighting 2-on-1, the outnumbered player has to contend with paging through 2 books, and there are special rules for using the X column on the maneuvers chart. Conceivably, you could also have a 3 versus 1, 4 versus 1, and so on. In this case, the attacks number at the top of the character sheet becomes very important. In general, a character can only attack once during a combat round, but an attack number of 2 means that the character can engage that many opponents. For example, the troll has an attack of 2/1R, which means he can attack 2 opponents in the same round unless he's raging, in which case he can only attack once. The Coldrake just has 2 attacks, which means its maneuver for the round can apply to up to 2 opponents. There is certainly a learning curve in regards to this game, but once you and the other player get it down, the game flows amazingly fast, and it's quite evocative, though the quality of the artwork does vary greatly from book to book, and the pictures are supposed to be graphical representations of the Ral Parthan miniature on which they are based. The biggest hurdle to entry into this game was and is the cost of the books, which were originally about $5.95 a book back in the 80s, but will run you between $20 and $30 these days, which is a bit expensive for a game system that you play probably while you're waiting to play other games. That said, it's definitely a fun and amazing pastime, great to take to a convention for you and another player to just sit down and play a game while you're waiting for an event to start. It's a really unique experience in the realm of medieval fantasy combat. Now, what about you? Have you played this game before? And what was your experience? What is your favorite character? Do you have one? Go ahead and give us the details in the comments. And that's about all I have for you for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Next week, I'm going to be doing something a bit different. I'm going through my Dwarven Forge build for my Hyperborea campaign, the Tomb of Moloch. I'd like to take a moment to thank my patrons. Without you, this channel is not possible. Please give this video a like, comment, and share. Please check out my Teespring store so you can get some great gaming swag, t-shirts, carry bags, coffee cups, and more. Join the channel's Facebook page, RPG Retro Reviews, and consider supporting the channel by becoming a patron yourself. Or alternatively, you can just send a tip through the PayPal tip jar or leave a tip through Super Thanks. And as always, my friends, may your D20 roll true and game on.